We're rolling now.
Okay, why don't we start with the proponents of the measure. You've put it on the ballot. We'll give you a chance to tell us the basics, how much money it's going to raise, what you're going to do with it, and we'll go from there.
Sure, thank you.
And please introduce yourself the first time you speak.
And if you have any literature that you were going to hand out, do it now.
I'll leave you with the
Yeah, just get it in front of us. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. My name is Christine Lewis. I serve on Metro Council. I represent District 2, which is the southern portion of the region. I represent constituencies from deep southwest Portland all the way through Westland and Lake Oswego, over to Happy Valley, Milwaukee, Oregon City, Gladstone, unincorporated Clackamas County. I work with my 6 elected colleagues on issues that are important to the region. Obviously, Metro has stepped up in a big way over the past couple of years on housing and homelessness, but historically we have been responsible for helping the region plan for our future. Land use and transportation planning, work on parks and natural areas, and we do garbage and recycling. Additionally, we have investments in helping our regional economy benefit from arts, culture, and tourism, including the Oregon Zoo. This year, we're asking our voters to step up again in support of our Oregon Zoo. We have a 2008 measure that was a bond that we've successfully completed on time and on budget that made improvements to the habitats at about 40% of the Oregon Zoo. We know we have more to do. That is what
What's the face amount of that bond? It's been so long. It's 125?
125, and this one we're going at for 380 million. That seems like a big difference, but in real buying terms, it's about the same. And we are actually going out at 8.5 cents per thousand of assessed value, and that's a slight decrease from where we were in 2008. So we are sensitive to what we've been asked by voters across the region to take care of our core responsibility, but are doing it in a way that we've heard what the governor's task force, the business community have all said loud and clear, which is do not raise taxes lower than when you can. And we are proud to be coming forward with this measure with the support of community, with the support of Portland Metropolitan Chamber, business, as well as labor.
What are you going to do with the money?
We are going to complete projects in our master plan, which we just handed over. We spent about a year and a half working through the issues of highest concern for animal wellness, for habitats, for education, as well as making sure that our facilities are up to speed on sustainability and accessibility. That includes everything from ADA to making sure it's a good visitor experience. I have with me today Heidi Ron, who's our zoo director, and Melanie Billings-Young, who's the incoming chair of the foundation, and they can add to that as well.
Okay, so the bond 2008, was that what it was, for $125 million? Did you spend all that money? Did you do everything with it you said you were going to do?
Yes.
Yes, I'm Heidi Ron, the Oregon Zoo Director. I've been the director since 2021. Prior to that, I did oversee the last zoo bond measure and was the zoo bond director since 2013. And we did complete all of the projects that we committed to. We did spend all of the money on time, on budget, and now we're moving into the next phase of our campus plan.
And the phase that you're seeking funding for now, was that outlined back in 2008?
Yeah, the 2008 bond measure passed, and then we worked on a campus plan called a master plan at that time, and it was a 20-year plan. So we finished phase 1. We're now working into phase 2, and this is the updated version of what phase 2 would look like.
And the Metro vote that sent this to voters?
Our council voted
Yeah.
February 1st.
Unanimous?
Unanimous support.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's have the opponents of the measure, please. Whoever speaks first, introduce yourself, and we'll have time for more details, but just give us a broad overview of your opposition, please.
Okay, so my name is Bala Seshasai. I'm with the organization Free the Oregon Zoo Elephants, and this is John Gramstead. He's representing Gimme Shelter Portland. So we are opposed to the measure, and first, before going into the whys, I want to thank Willamette Week for having us here, because it's not, we don't have the resources that bond proponents do, which is $600,000 in their PAC fund to push for this campaign. We don't have that, so we really appreciate having our voice heard. So the main reasons we are opposed to this bond is the previous bond was completed on time, on schedule, on budget, is as they claim. But if you look at the actual records, if you look at the medical records, it bears that it hasn't, it doesn't reflect in what the animals are going through. We have had 4 elephants die, and there's a lot of diseases going on, tuberculosis, foot disease, and so on, stereotypical behavior. We have a long list that we can share, that we get from the medical records. There is fighting and bullying among the elephants. Polar bears are not doing well. There's stereotypy you can observe. You can just buy a ticket to the zoo, go walk and see for yourself. And that doesn't reflect in what they state. And if you look at the bond measure, what they're asking for, it's clear that the zoo hasn't presented a clear need, how they are going to spend the 380 million. It's all vague statements as of now. It is clear that the 2008 bond measure is being paid off, and the tax spigot is going to run dry. And if we continue this, the tax keeps flowing in. That seems to be the intention, not a clear need for what the animals deserve. And finally, if you look at the zoo trend, the long-term trend, you can see that the zoo attendance has been actually on a downward trend. The expenses are going up, and the revenues are not keeping up with it. We have all the details we can share with you. So Metro, which is responsible for looking at the long-term trends, is failing to see that this is not a future we need to be investing on.
So, to be clear, I mean, are you advocating for the closure of the zoo, or just for the rejection of this bond?
The short-term goal is rejection of this bond because it does not serve the stated mission of the zoo, which is conservation. The long-term, we are not anti-zoo. We advocate for responsible management of animals in our care, which means not spending all the money on exotic animals like elephants and polar bears that do not do well. And if you look at the 2008 bond measure, 57.5 million was spent on elephant lands, 47.2 million was spent on polar bears, out of a budget of 125 million. So 57 and 47, that comes to almost 100 million, close to 100 million spent on just out of 125 on exotic species. If you look at condors, California condors, that are the native species that actually have a chance of being let out back into the wild and not confined in the cages, it's 2.6 million. So you can see what the Metro and Zoo's priorities are lying in. Bringing in exotic animals that cannot lead a good life. So that is what we are against. We are not anti-zoo. We are totally okay with condors, being held back into the wild.
Okay. John, do you want to add to that?
I think that my presentation, I wouldn't do a presentation. I have mostly figures and numbers and things that would back it up. I wouldn't want to bore you. Sir?
The group you're with is called Gimme Shelter?
Gimme Shelter Portland. We focus mostly on animal issues, mostly in the county with
So the Gimme
County
Shelter is
Animal
animal shelter?
No, it's not.
Oh.
We focus on political issues mostly with Multnomah County Animal Control, but we also bleed into other issues that involve animals, one of which is the zoo and how they care for them or take care of them or not.
So,
go ahead.
yeah, so elephants is clearly an issue, right? Not new to you. You were kind enough to print our endorsement in 2008 in which we said the following. Far more important, however, is this. There is a movement across the country to close elephant exhibits in zoos out of the belief that the animals are too large and intelligent and need too much space to be kept in zoos. Bronx Zoo, Detroit Zoo, Philadelphia zoos have already taken this momentous step. This is back in 2008. I don't know what has happened since then.
Actually, Louisville Zoo.
So have San Francisco and Chicago and Dallas joined the herd this past summer. Oh, herd, previous already. Yet Portland, which is long marketed zoo on the shoulders of its elephants, wants to use this measure to put gold-plated shackles on the status quo. Well, irrelevant from that, elephant seems to be the significant piece of the controversy and the opposition. We wrote 8 years ago that the Portland Zoo seemed to be moving, the Oregon Zoo seemed to be moving in a different direction from the rest of the country. I'm sure you'd like to respond to that. And they all look at the zoo director.
No, I actually want to say something, but I think it should start with you.
Sure. Absolutely, we are committed to the elephants at the Oregon Zoo. We are part of a huge effort globally to be working on elephant conservation, but also elephant habitat management, elephant enrichment, and what we've learned. We have a long history with elephants. I'm here just to talk about the facts. As the zoo director today, I can tell you the facts of what we committed to in the last bond measure.
Let me put it this way. What does Bronx, Detroit, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Chicago and Dallas have wrong? Because clearly they disagree with you.
Oh, I wouldn't say it that way. I would say that some of them don't have the support and the funding to make sure that they have the habitats of the space and the complexity needed for the future of managing elephants. And our community has doubled down on that. So a lot of it was just access and what they could offer to their elephants.
So there is not a movement across the country for humanitarian purposes, no matter the size of the habitat, to get rid of elephants from zoos?
There are standards that we have to meet through Association of Zoos and accreditation, and if you cannot meet those standards, then you make decisions for your organization of where you go next with all species.
Can you speak to the issue of attendance? Is it going down?
Attendance is strategically managed by us, so what we learned coming out of COVID, we still do timed management, was for the guest experience not to have a 15,000 person day at the Oregon Zoo and make sure that we can manage that. So we manage flow, it helps with parking, it helps with the experience, and we're doing that intentionally.
So what can you tell us has happened to attendance in the last 5 years, and also give us a per capita comparison to other metropolitan areas in terms of popularity of a zoo in Portland as opposed to Sacramento or Denver, San Diego?
Sure. Attendance was around a little more than 1.5 pre-COVID, and we're creeping back up to that. We're 1.5 million, annually. And we're between 1.3 and 1.4 now. But we've made some changes. We used to have a major summer concert series, which brought in several hundred, or about 60,000 people. We no longer do that. When we regrouped after COVID, we decided we really needed to focus on our mission. And so now we have summer nights, which are focused on accessing animal areas and really making it about connection to
And
the
how does it
animals.
compare on a per capita basis to
Per
other
capita,
zoos?
I will have to get back to you on the specifics between those two events, but we were not bringing in significant amount of revenue from hosting a summer concert series.
No, forget the
Well,
concerts. I'm
plus
just
that
wondering-
guy fell in the rhino pit, so that wasn't good.
That didn't help. No, I'm just wondering, as a general matter, on a per capita basis, forget the concerts, is Portland Zoo a more visited or less visited zoo?
Our per capita
than-
has gone up in the past several years.
But compared to other cities, compared to Denver, compared to San Diego, compared to...
I don't know their per capitas. I know we're doing well.
So different way of looking at that. On an operating basis, it looks like the zoo loses considerable amount of money each year. Just on a gross operating basis, revenues minus expenses is a negative number.
No, we are pretty much neutral. We're bringing in about $1 million or $2 million that we're putting into capital and capital maintenance every year.
Are you including internal transfers in that?
Yes.
Because it looks like
Yes.
there's a big transfer
Yes.
from the general fund, right?
And we assume 30% of the annual budget for the zoo comes from general fund at Metro. It is one of the core responsibilities,
So- okay,
supporting the
so-
zoo year in and
so-
year out.
So it's heavily subsidized by the...
Yes, because it was one of our original responsibilities when we were formed as a district.
Why should the zoo, which has the opportunity to sell tickets and to sell concessions and to sell merchandise, why should it be subsidized?
60% of their annual revenue does come from ticket sales, but they are able to manage for keeping the zoo an affordable place for families across the region to visit. I was recently at the San Diego Zoo. My ticket was nearly $100. I can get my annual membership for me and my 2 kiddos for the same price here in Portland. So we are managing towards both making sure that membership and ticket sales go into over 50%. But this is a place that values the wildlife conservation we do. It's worth the public investment. And frankly, the regional tourism economy is the #1 ticketed place in the entire state.
Well,
I would
okay,
suggest
which
that
means
the demand could, supply like a slightly more expensive ticket so that we don't have to do this.
We've raised ticket prices within the past 5 years, and we plan to probably in the next 5.
But Counselor, at the outset, you touched on all the other missions that Metro has. One of them is now affordable housing. There are other missions that you have that are really under-resourced. You're out of money for housing, for instance, but you're still sending a significant subsidy to something that a lot of people aren't sure should exist, and that does, again, have a revenue-generating component, unlike other business or other functions that Metro provides. So
And I would argue, even if we were to shift so that we raise ticket prices and slightly more of the annual fund came out of ticket sales and slightly less out of general fund, that still doesn't enable us to have tens and hundreds of millions to do capital improvement. And the ability to actually do a master plan and invest in the campus, not at a one-off, one or two projects at a time, but actually invest in ADA across the facility, invest in the places in the zoo where we know we need to be on the forefront and not on the back end trailing what the accreditation standards are. I want to be out there making sure that we take care of the penguinarium, so I'm in there with my two kiddos. I'm not like, ooh, it smells, but instead I'm like, let's look at that penguin.
Go ahead.
If that's about revenue, we can keep on that, because mine's a little different.
Well, I want to come back to an issue that may have predated your time at the zoo, but when we were last in this room to talk about the zoo bond, we talked about elephant lands. And Metro went down the road of looking at a piece of property out in Sandy that PGE owned, and it was an old lake bed. And there was a lot of talk about that being a long-term solution for the issues that you've raised about less than ideal conditions of keeping elephants in a zoo. So what happened with that?
We did. We committed to a feasibility assessment. We spent about 8 years working on that. And we did look at that property. We tried to understand what was the need. And once we designed the elephant lands, and in terms of the elephants that we knew we would be having, we recognized there was no longer a need, nor an ongoing sustainable operating source.
What
That
do
was
you
the
mean
risk.
there wasn't any longer a need?
We could fulfill what we needed for the elephants in our care on site at the zoo.
So is it fair to say that the central conflict between these two groups is that they don't believe that the money you spent in 2008 or the money you're going to spend now is going to adequately protect elephants, and you're convinced that you're at global standards? Is that, I don't want to be unfair to either side, but is that the issue?
It's a little more than that. Elephants, we are bringing elephants up because partly it's the part of organization the mission of the organization I'm part of, but also because it's the report card, so to speak. For 2008 was mostly about elephants, and how they have delivered on that issue will dictate how they are going to deliver on this next bond measure. And we claim that it's been a failure, so the next bond measure should not be.
And
voted
the
on.
evidence of its failure is
The
health.
The outcomes,
So how do
the
you
deaths.
respond? He gave us some anecdotal evidence about health among these mammals.
Maybe I'll just spend a minute saying that in addition to, I'm Melanie Billings-Young, excuse me. I'm the soon-to-be chair, currently vice chair of the foundation. I'm also the head of advocacy. I joined the foundation about 5 years ago, and just a quick anecdote as to why I did. We were living in Malaysia at the time. I was doing a lot of work in Sabah, the Malaysian state of Borneo. Elephants are being decimated there. They're down to about 120,000. They used to run in huge numbers. While we were there was an incident in which a palm plantation owner laced some palm nuts with poison and killed a herd because they were trying to move more palm area and the herds were coming in the area. A number of babies did not die because they were breastfeeding. When my husband and I visited there, we learned that they had gathered these baby elephants together, that they were being provided milk powder by the Oregon Zoo. Now, I'm originally from Oregon. It was a big surprise to me. And then eventually, all of those baby elephants got EEHV, which is very, very common among elephants in the wild. In fact, they're kind of born with it, like we're all born with the ability to get chicken pox. And it particularly kills off juveniles. It was the Oregon Zoo that was providing medicine and training, but once an animal gets EEHV, they have about an 85% mortality rate. Yes, it's true that Lily got EEHV, but it's common throughout the wild. You can't say that this is the result of it being in a zoo. It is true that 2 of the older elephants died in a 15-year period. That's fairly common. Probably 15 years from now, I won't be here talking to you. So I don't think that there is any case to be made about the lack of healthfulness of this zoo. In fact, the Elephant Lands won an award for the best new enclosure by the American Zoos and Aquarium when it was built. Right now, it's 4 times the size of what the previous elephant area was. The elephants, they put like giant Fitbits on them to test because they've put different feeding ways, so they have to use their brains and they have to move around. And our elephants are now walking, on average, about 3.2 miles a day, which is the same as an elephant in the wild. They changed the material on the ground so that they wouldn't have the same problems with their feet. And now it's a kind of a more sandy soil. So a huge amount of effort and research has gone into this. And the last thing that I would say is that the reason why it's so important to have things, exhibits like what is called here exotic animals, is because people don't care about things unless they see them. And when people can come and they can see the animals and they can see the educational things that we put up, talking about the extreme threat to animals in the wild and the importance of using sustainable palm oil and other issues like that, this is vitally important for not just our zoo, but for the world.
But you're aware that there are people just as articulate as you who claim that elephants cannot be held in captivity safely, not just because their community isn't willing to bond themselves to an extent to create a large enough habitat, that it is simply inhumane. So we're all laymen, we hear this, we think of Oregon as an enlightened place. It's really hard to reconcile.
So I will just give you one statement back, and that is many people don't know, for example, that elephants are familial. They won't take in an orphan. Every one of those orphaned elephants I just told you about died because there was no elephant herd in the wild that would take them in. So yes, there are some facts on one side, but there are plenty of facts on the other side, and I have lived out in that world and I have seen the tragedy. 96% of black rhinos, we just had the birth of one, 96% are now gone at a rate of more than 1 a day. So there's no Madagascar cartoon movie out there where animals are living in a happy world. It is vitally important that we have this here so that people can learn about the threat.
Let me ask, this will be my last question, famous last words, and it's going to annoy my staff. Are there any animals, in your opinion, that shouldn't be held in captivity? And if so, what are they? And I'm sorry, because this is a little bit out of order, but I'm just curious.
It's not fair because I haven't thought about it, but I will think about it, and if by the end of this talk I come up with one, I'll tell you.
Okay.
How do you guys gauge your animal's happiness? I'm sure you track like repetitive behaviors. I don't know how else animals like reflect their happiness or unhappiness, but I assume you guys track that.
I'm going to go with the zoo director who works with our doctor there and knows a thing or two.
Yeah, we have a whole science and welfare team at the Oregon Zoo who tracks, and we're one of the only zoos that has an endocrine lab in our zoo, and that allows us to track and monitor hormones. So we do that so we know where stressors are. Stress is not always a bad thing. We all get stressed at moments. Maybe we're feeling it a little bit right now. And it's just a matter of the ups and downs of how life goes. So we monitor and we manage their hormones. We have behavioral experts on site. We have some of the best animal health and veterinarian team in the country. And I will say that investment in the veterinary medical center in that last round of investments allowed us to get some of the best equipment and then attract some of the best staff.
So how happy are your animals? I mean, is that too broad of a question?
Yeah, that's too broad of a question in terms of how we
But you can't say whether
define.
they're generally happy or unhappy. I mean, how would you?
I would say the
not know?
animals at the Oregon Zoo are very well taken care of. They have great animal health care, great behavioral health care, and a team that takes care of them and loves them more than anybody could possibly imagine. We have the elephant team itself has over 200 years of experience working with elephants, and they're monitoring them on a daily basis.
Do you think your animals are happy in general?
I think the animals are very well taken care of. And
But there's
She
a
might have
difference
one on
between
the
very
record.
well taken care of and happy. There's a difference there. Can you say your animals are happy?
I don't know how you define happy. I think our animals are very well taken care of and have access to really good resources, and that they get the best care and welfare from the zoo team.
And one more question on this, does your data suggest, your compilation of data, does it suggest that your animals are healthier and happier than they were in 2008, or less happy?
Yes,
same?
so that's a great point. The team of scientists did do a long-range study of the before and after of the new elephant habitat, and we have that study available that showed just in terms of their behavior, their movement, their body condition, and what has changed with the new investment. So we do that specifically for elephants. We also have it on an ongoing basis for several other species. So we're monitoring them consistently, but that report is available. The other thing I will add is there was a Zoo Bond Oversight Committee that followed the last round of investments, and that final Zoo Bond Oversight Committee is put together a report on all of the outcomes and the investments made in that last round. That would also be a great resource.
How important are elephants to the viability of the zoo? Or maybe a
Elephants-
different way of asking it is, those zoos that have shut down their elephant exhibits, have they seen a decline in attendance or revenue?
I've not tracked the impact on those other zoos. For the Oregon Zoo, the elephants are the #1 guest-rated experience.
Based
We
on
track
that.
on a daily, weekly basis. We get guest feedback, and every week the elephant habitat is the top-rated experience for our guests.
You've never done an analysis, though, of saying, here's what it costs to maintain elephants, so here's what we would save by not having them, but here's what it would do to ticket sales, and it would be a wash, or it wouldn't. Have you ever done that?
I know what it costs to have the elephants in the
But you
Oregon
don't know
Zoo.
what the cost in reduced attendance would be.
I do not.
John, you're scribbling away over there, but you're not saying anything. What's on your
Well, I
mind?
take umbrage with some of the things that have been said. First of all, Bala represents Free the Oregon Zoo elephants, so they're centrally focused on elephants in captivity, and I agree, but I should defer some of this to him, but when I heard the statement that elephants average 3.5 miles of walking a day, that's ridiculous. It's more like 50.
You mean in the wild?
In the wild, yeah. And I will have a packet I can hand out to everybody, by the way. So my information, the things I researched were basically the finances of this, where the money's spent, how much is spent, the use of the term tax rates and things like that. I mean, we're in Multnomah County. It's the second highest tax rate in the United States for any county. The other one is Nassau County in New York, where the Kardashians have summer homes. So when we're starting to talk about spending $380 million and putting that on the tax docket again, when all the other politicians that I've talked to are talking about taking a tax holiday and maybe deferring some regulatory taxes and things like this is a pretty bold ask just for the money. I don't know how appropriate it is. I've never done one of these, so I don't know if I can address.
This is your first time with us?
Yeah, on an issue for an endorsement, yeah.
Yes, go for it. Don't worry about it.
Say what's on your mind.
Because I was concerned about the issue of the elephants in Malaysia, I think you said, and that they got into some tainted palm oil. So would you say palm oil, I'll hedge my bet, having talked to 3 of your previous zoo directors, all of them said to me that habitat destruction for elephants was the #1 issue for their demise in the wild, and the culprit for that's palm oil. So is that, were we heading in that? Can I make that point? Would you agree with that?
Am I supposed to be answering directly?
Well, anybody from the zoo, I'm fine with that, because
Doesn't bother me.
Yeah, we were talking about palm oil.
Okay, well, because the zoo bond is proposed to protect animal health, provide conservation education, and increase sustainability. I'm not sure what increased sustainability means, but provide conservation. I mean, that would imply then, particularly with elephants, that we're talking about doing something to reduce palm oil in the wild. Would that be, if that...
I think they're using it in a different context.
Oh, okay.
We actually do have a lot of materials up, and we put them on our website about the importance of using sustainable palm oil. Obviously, palm oil is vital to economies in Southeast Asia, but there is a sustainable palm oil app that you can get, and we encourage everyone to download that app so that they can use it, and when they buy anything that uses palm oil, which is just about everything these days, that they make sure that they don't use any palm oil by growers who are not following rigorous standards.
So John has raised
Yeah.
what I think is an important point that we have not concentrated on very much so far, which is, if I understand correctly, the last zoo bond was for $125 million, is that right?
Correct.
And this is for $380 million.
Correct.
How is it a renewal?
You don't renew a bond. So this is a replacement.
Okay, so it's a replacement.
Yes.
It's a really expensive replacement in the middle of a time when almost every other government is talking about a tax holiday.
But again, we were at 9 cents per thousand of assessed value, and we actually dropped down to 8.5 cents per 1,000 of assessed value. So
Did properties just get that much more valuable in the time?
yes, we've experienced a great deal of growth in the past 15, 20 years.
So bigger base, lower interest rate.
Yes.
It gets you a bigger
Yeah, and we've also
face amount.
we've also had some real success with how we've been able to sell our bonds in strategic tranches, and that's why we expect that we will be able to lower the tax rate while getting far more than we did 15 years ago.
But wasn't there a wonderful opportunity to lower the tax rate right now and get to another 125?
In terms of
Spending a smaller bond.
a smaller bond, and yes, and we would then leave many of the projects on the table, even at this 380 number.
Well, a lot of people in Oregon are tightening their belts these days.
Yes, and we are still going to have to be strategic, and we cannot do everything. So we know that there are certain projects we have to do, and that is why we are moving forward at the 380 number, because it still gives us the opportunity to hit every single must-do project, like the giraffes, like the penguinarium, do the ADA and accessibility, while being reflective of the environment that we're in. Asking us to come down slightly. I recognize it's a minuscule 0.5 cents, but we are in the place of having to take care of what we do well at Metro in order to keep doing new investments in housing and spread our energies into where the community's asked us to step up.
So what's the single greatest problem at the zoo today? In terms of these capital projects that you're proposing, what's the greatest need?
Thank you for asking. Infrastructure failure. So there's some of our habitats where the pipes and the water systems are at risk of failure over the next 5 to 10 years, and that's what we started looking at first. And we have some of the facilities that are from 1959, so 65 years old, and those would be the first ones to be addressed. That is the penguinarium space, the tiger and the tiger moat, outdated space, red panda space, and really upgrading those systems. That's an issue. We started this process. You have a document of the campus plan that we spent about a year on by listening to the community and what they wanted, and doing an assessment of where we had the biggest risk and what needed to be addressed. And so the priority projects will follow those infrastructure failures, community needs around accessibility, and animal needs in terms of what we see for the future. This is a 12-year plan for us, so it's how we lay out the campus for the next 12 years, and then balancing with what the community can take in terms of construction on site on an ongoing basis. So how do we address the biggest risks and manage for the guest flow? So we're looking at the next 12 years to address the infrastructure risks, as well as we know our changing needs of the animals and where we want to be. We're going to be 150 years old in about 13 years, so where do we want to be as a zoo at that time? So the plan is thinking forward and addressing the immediate needs.
And just to add on to that, and certainly Heidi can talk about it in more detail than I can, but coping with climate change, which is making things more difficult for the guests as well as for the animals as well as for the infrastructure.
So, Kessler, your housing bond is fully committed, is that correct?
That's correct.
So, you're making the choice as a council to issue new bonds for the zoo rather than to issue new housing bonds?
We're making the choice as a council to keep taxes steady. So if we were to reissue, or if we were to go out with a new housing bond this year, that would be a bond on top of the other bond. So yes, the bonds are fully committed. They're not going to be paid for until 28. We cannot renew a bond until 28 for housing.
You could issue a new $380 million housing bond this year, or you could issue a $380 million zoo bond, is that correct?
And not change the total tax, yes.
So you're putting the replacement of the infrastructure at the zoo ahead of building new housing for humans.
We're committed to taking care of the zoo because at the core of how Metro was founded 40-ish years ago, the zoo was one of our responsibilities. So we are committed to doing what we need to do to take care of the zoo, while at the same time we are committed to making sure that we find revenues. And you yourself have heard all of the conversation that's going into how we are potentially going to use revenues from supportive housing services to make sure that we have 0 to 30 and 30 to 60% affordable
Right,
units.
I'm well aware of that endeavor, but I think it's clear that you're putting this as a higher priority than issuing new housing bonds. You could issue housing bonds, or you could issue zoo bonds. You've chosen to issue zoo bonds.
If the voters elected to do that.
Pardon?
Yes, you've chosen to give the voters.
He's asking
this
about the
choice as
referral,
opposed
and yes.
Yeah.
So why? Why is the zoo a higher priority than housing people who are sleeping on the street?
Housing people who are sleeping on the street is absolutely a high priority, and it's
But
where
the zoo is higher.
housing people generally is what takes up the bulk of my time why I ran for office. The opportunity here was to be in the position to refer bonds that we've been working on at the staff level and community input level. Over 1,000 people went into that master plan in their work. And so they came to us on a 2-year cycle. If we've done this, time to go.
I'm sure all that's true. I just want to be clear that you have made the zoo a higher priority than housing.
I don't look at it that way, but
How could you not? I mean, you're not referring a housing bond. You're referring a zoo bond.
yes. And meanwhile, I'm working really hard to provide guidance for how we move forward as a region with 3 counties all working on their supportive housing services measure, which is ample resource to do what we committed to do in the services sector for the people sleeping on the street and at risk of becoming homeless.
If you refer that. as a
If,
benefit.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's an if, and I'm full foot on the pedal for referring.
Okay.
Can I get the zoo director to respond to this elephant question? Because it just strikes me that this is the heart of the controversy. Oregon is such an enlightened place. We're so pro-animal. And here you are at the center of this debate, which you're not responsible for. You inherited it. But, I mean, you've got to concede that there are conversations around the world among zoo directors in big cities that have the money who are saying, we're not going to have elephants, not because we can't afford to build a habitat. We just think it's cruel to keep these animals in captivity. And I'd at least like you to acknowledge that there is a legitimate debate about this issue.
The directors that are making this decision are part of a broader group that's really looking at the population management of elephants, and some of them are looking at it as they only have 1 left, or they have 2 left and they're going to be aging, and we need elephants to be managed in a herd. So they're either closing for now and seeing if they're going to be adding them back later, but I wouldn't say they're closing due to cruelty. They're closing due to what they know is great for the elephants, and do they have the space, and are they going to have the herd that they need in the future? So making sure that they are working as part of this overall. There was a major effort of the last 2 years of the zoos across the country to look at the elephant population and how and where are we going in the future collectively. So some of them are consciously making decisions in partnership with zoos like us who have that space and want more elephants to make that transition for the sustainability of the
Is
population.
it possible that some zoos are shutting down their elephants simply because it's politically unpalatable?
That is possible.
Well, I mean, I'm asking you, you're going to all these conventions, you're talking to all these people. Are you talking to directors of zoos in San Diego who say, I would have never shut down elephants? It doesn't make any sense from a zoological, biological standard, but the political pressure is such, it's just not worth it.
The conversations are really focused on the population, the conservation of the species, and how we're doubling down in the countries where we have them.
Does the zoo make money breeding elephants?
No.
I mean, you do, right?
We have a baby on the way.
Right. I mean, that's what Oregon Zoo is famous for. You've successfully bred out elephants in captivity.
We are successful.
Right.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering why you haven't done that for money with other zoos. No, that's...
I don't understand the question for other zoos.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, you're breeding elephants in captivity, nobody else is, so there must be a demand for
That's
some...
not, that's not true. There are many baby elephants born at zoos across the
Oh, I
country.
thought Oregon Zoo was famous for being the most successful breeder in captivity.
We have
We were the
bred,
first.
but we were the first, right.
Right.
But there are many
Okay.
babies being born across zoos right now.
Gotcha.
Let's give you each a chance to say anything that you haven't said or to rebut anything that you think.
Before we do,
Oh.
both Lucas and Anthony have been very patient.
I'm not going to say no in this one.
Okay. Lucas, anything?
Thank you, though. Well, just as someone else decided, I'm still struggling here
I mean, I think Nigel's bringing up the key point that I think a lot of us are going to struggle on here. So, I mean, I just want to give you guys one more opportunity. Like, you're going to invest $380 million in the zoo. What catastrophic thing is going to happen if we don't invest that money? Like, what is this, like, if we're really looking at this in either or, between housing people on the streets or fixing our zoo, I mean, we all know what's horrible things happening over here. Like, if we don't do this zoo investment, what are we gonna lose?
I want to be really frank, the opportunity here is to make a good zoo better, but we have some real pressing needs. We are one of 2 of the longest standing accredited zoos in the country. AZA has accredited us for 50 years. The other one that's gone on 50 years is Philadelphia. And last time they were here to visit, I had a very nice conversation with the panel, but there are places where we have to invest so that we are not on the barely keeping up edge and we are taking care of the animals in a way that we know we need to.
But are animals gonna, like, are animals gonna die if we don't pass this bond?
I can't commit one way or another.
Okay, but we know homeless people are gonna die without affordable housing. That has been proven year after year after year. Again, back to Lucas's and Nigel's question, I mean, it's just like, we know what the threats of not having more housing is. What are the threats of not passing this bond?
I mean, I do think that there is some animal welfare threat. I do think that there is some threat to us being able to continue to operate every single exhibit we currently have at the zoo. And at the end of the day, I don't think that it is fair to say it's either or, because at the way I see it, we have the potential to make investments in housing as a region months from now, and I look forward to continuing those conversations. But in my mind, they're outside of this room. We're here with a referral that we made on February 1st. It's going to voters in 2 months, and I'm asking them to support it because Metro is being a good partner. We've stepped up in a major way for the past 6 years, first with a housing bond, now supportive housing services. But we've got to take care of our core mission. Garbage and trash and the zoo and land use planning were part of what was given to us as our charge before I was born.
I think the zoo's role as an education center is really vital. And yes, we do have immediate problems, and we are haphazardly, it seems, if we look at the counties or the city, dealing with them at some level, and I can't answer to that. But I can say that the importance of kids and adults, but being able to come in, see an animal directly, read what life is like, read the small actions that they can take to make things better. We owe it not just to the people within our community, but to the animals within our community, and to the commitment that we have made to care about this whole planet. I'm not going to divide between exotic animals and local animals. We brought condors back from the edge of extinction. We're trying to do that now with Oregon sea otters who have been gone for over 100 years. This isn't a binary choice you have to make. Are you going to love your husband or your kids? The fact is that we are asking the voters of Portland, is it worth it to you in your minds to protect this facility and the mission that we have?
I actually have a question about otters.
Go for it.
The High Desert Museum seems to do pretty well with, don't they? Or am I missing?
I'm sorry?
The High Desert Museum
Oh.
in Den. They're still going. They're doing pretty well, aren't they?
Actually, they're having a lot of problems.
Are they really?
Yeah.
They received some of the state's funds for arts and culture venues.
So are they suffering because they don't have attractions that are as exotic as, say, elephants and giraffes and things? Because where I was going with this is, could you make the zoo as attractive with something like otters, which are, quite, they have.
They're very
they are
cute. They're also the most expensive animal to feed on our
Are they
entire
really?
campus.
Wow.
They eat 1/3 of their body weight every day, and they are eating seafood, which seafood at a restaurant, that's the highest dollar. So they are cute and they are fun and they're worth our investment, particularly with our LACA Alliance partnership to reintroduce them on the Oregon coast, because right now you got to go up to Washington to see them, but they're not cheap.
But
They're
you're
like-
committed to that.
Oh, yeah.
You're going full speed on saving the otters.
Yep.
Well, we do care very much about local species,
Yeah.
and we work with butterflies, with frogs, with otters, with condors. We have programs for all of those things.
But you still need the big.
My kid doesn't
Megafauna.
want to go see the western pond turtle. My kid wants to see the elephant or the tiger. He's brilliant. He's nearly 4, but it'll be a little while before we talk about turtles.
Got it.
Sorry.
So I feel like we have all talked, everyone has talked, but the animals haven't had a say. So I want to play, just with your permission, 1-minute clip of another normal day in the zoo, and probably it'll answer your question about whether the animals are happy. I'm sorry if you can't see it well, but that's Chandra. That's a Borneo elephant going crazy at the zoo. She's back and forth. It's called stereotypy. It's what all these megafauna, elephants and polar bears do when they are going crazy in captivity. And this is the polar bear. I'm not just an elephant guy, just to be sure.
You're also a polar bear guy.
I'm just another resident, and you see the polar bear, unfortunately, it doesn't have a trunk. It can't swing, but it does walk back and forth, going crazy.
Respond to his notion that elephants walk 50 miles in the wild compared to 3 miles in a zoo? No?
I'm not qualified to respond to that.
Is that accurate as
Well,
far as you know?
I think one of you said that it's a
I said
2.3
it.
miles was the same.
3.2 miles, and I did get that from talking to the doctor and our head of conservation at the zoo. I can't give you the actual source right now, but I could find it. But since
So you dispute his 50 miles?
100%. Also, I've spent a long time, I've spent 20 years living in Southeast Asia, and elephants are not moving 50 miles a day. They eat constantly, so they can't go at any, they're not like running through the forests.
The Humane Society, I just Googled this, says wild elephants roam up to 30 miles a day.
They can, up to, but that doesn't mean that that's what they're doing on a daily basis.
But that's a far cry from 3.2 miles. That's...
Well, I can double check this with our head of conservation, and I will, and get back to you on that. But that is exactly what I was informed.
Amazing the science isn't settled on this, or the biology isn't settled.
That's always.
Maybe it's not amazing.
The other thing that I do want to say, though, is he raises the point of Chandra. I don't know if you know, but we got Chandra from Malaysia because she was orphaned. Her mother was killed. She was blinded in one eye. She had no chance of survival. She is an orphan that the Oregon Zoo took. And you might say something about the movement of elephants, or the movement of the way they walk and things. Is there any issue with that he said about pacing or something?
Oh, I'm not familiar with the video that he is showing, but absolutely, we've done what we can to make sure that we have the best habitat for what we know, and science was used to design that habitat. This next phase of the bond measure is not about the elephants. It is about our Africa zone, it is about our coastal zone, our penguinarium, our sea otters, our seals. It's about climate resilience. It's about making sure that we can become a fossil fuel-free campus, that we're walking our talk. It's about making sure that our community has access and that they feel, we have an 80-foot drop when you come into the zoo. That is a hard thing for some people to get up and out of. It's about making sure that they feel like they're comfortable when they're there, they have their needs taken care of, and they can get in and out and have a good experience. It's about learning and connecting to education, and it's about tying back to our conservation and our species recovery efforts.
Let's do last statements from both sides. Please, John, if you would
I have a
go ahead
question
with
just
it.
relative to what was just said.
Mostly we just want to
Sure, I'll button up real quickly. I take umbrage with many things, most of which are the numbers. You're way off and you're way wrong, and I can prove it. It's in your packets. I'll give them to you guys. And have
Just
fun
give us
with
a
that.
couple of highlights real quickly.
One of the things I'd like to say is all the things you just rattled off that's going to be coming in this next bond measure, interestingly, are not in the bond measure that the voters are supposed to be voting on, and that's the same thing that happened the last time. Hence, I start with this comment from, you guys can read that, but we've now changed from, and this is what we're going to be getting into. The first bond measure in 1996, when 2008 was just the bond measure of 2008. Now we're in the bond measure for 2024, which is now called Phase 2. So we went back and renamed 2008 Phase 1. Be ready for Phase 3, Phase 4, Phase 5, Phase 6. 2008 runs out soon. Now we replace it with this one. This is why they use the term replacement. This is going to be an ongoing thing. So the questions about whether or not the $380 million could be better used somewhere else is legitimate, but it's going to be forever and ever and ever with the zoo. Some of the questions further I would have is, we're going to do ADA requirements at the zoo. We don't do them now. What? What was 2008 for? We're not ADA compliant at the zoo? We have to do that? I've been making notes, and we can meet later if you like, but
Okay.
I sat in at every single OSBAC meeting, and
Is he right that there's ADA is not, you're not ADA compliant now?
We have an ADA plan that's prioritizing our investment. So we are ADA compliant. And then we know the areas as we upgrade all of the new ones where we need to be really investing in more accessibility. And it's not just about ADA. It's about, and we brought a lot of folks into that design process the last run of the campus planning to figure out what they needed to feel comfortable at the zoo. But yes, we have an ADA plan.
But if my friend Elizabeth in a wheelchair, she can't go to everywhere in the zoo?
She can't go everywhere.
She can't, okay.
Les, anything that you have left unsaid that you would like to add?
I guess that I would say that it is true that we have problems in our city right now. But it is also true that people need a place where they can feel joy. And they need a place where it attracts visitors from all over the world. We need a place where children can go and learn. You don't give up all of those things because you're also experiencing problems at this time. And if you look at the organizations that have sent in endorsements on this, it really shows you. We have AFL-CIO, we have the Metro Chamber, we have a teachers group, we have the Nature Conservancy, obviously the Alaka Alliance. People from across the spectrum are saying this matters to us. And so what we're doing is putting this choice before the voter. We're not mandating it. We're saying, does this matter to you? And I think that they have a right to say, yes, we want something that will remind us that we were proud of our city.
Great. Can you tell us, you each are running campaigns for and against. How much money does your campaign have against? Are you running a campaign?
We are running a few ads. We have a website. We are asking friends to put
Okay.
word for us.
But you don't have much.
No.
And he said $600,000. Is that a correct figure for the campaign?
I'm
your
not
war
running
chest?
the campaign.
Well, somebody here is involved.
The woman who did.
Yeah, we had our campaign consultant here earlier. I can speak a little bit to that, and yes, that's roughly the right number of what's in our pack.
Can you tell us who some of the largest contributors are?
The Oregon Zoo Foundation is our largest
Who's
advocacy.
the largest contributor
Yeah.
to the Oregon Zoo Foundation?
We gave about 525.
600.
But who's the
The
largest?
foundation gave 500,000 and then another 100,000, and there are individual contributions, including from 2 people here.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
you.
Really helpful.
Thank you.